Morning, good afternoon, good evening. I think most of us have seen the devastation of the wildfires in America, California. Some people have doubted the problems of climate change. Whether people understand these problems of climate change or not, the reality is these disasters are becoming more frequent and very, very serious. Here is a video clip of the BBC coverage of the LA fires.
News from Los Angeles at this hour. A rapidly evolving wildfire has taken hold near the city, growing tenfold in just 20 minutes. Around 30,000 people have been evacuated from the Los Angeles neighborhood of Pacific Palisades, with fire officials saying that the blaze has taken hold of more than 1,200 acres.
The fire is being fueled by a combination of strong winds and surrounding topography.
It's a very frightening time for people who are having to leave their homes. They don't know if they're going to be there when they get back.
The fire has been sweeping through, fueled by strong winds continually over the last few hours.
My whole road is burning and there's abandoned cars all along the road and they're covered in ash, and it's so heartbreaking.
The firefighters here, they're not trying to save these structures. They're trying to prevent these flames from jumping to other neighborhoods, lighting other homes on fire.
Two more fires are also being reported to be spreading in other parts of Los Angeles, one growing rapidly in Eaton Canyon. And we're also hearing of a third one, which is being reported near Silmar.
Right now, there are more fires than there are firefighters to put them out. And that's the case with the Palisade fire on the other side of Los Angeles, and it's certainly the case here in Pasadena.
This is the worst situation I've seen in almost 30 years. These fires are right across the city.
We have 4 large fires burning in LA County at this time. We ask that you keep all of Los Angeles County in your thoughts and prayers.
A lot of these people are terrified, and they don't have a blanket, they don't have a wrap, they have nothing.
We're not out of this yet, and we need to continue to follow all guidance.
More fires are still popping up. The latest blaze is starting in the Hollywood Hills in the last hour or so.
Those fires, they are continuing to grow in strength, size, severity.
This is the moment a house in Studio City in the Hollywood Hills collapsed. You can see the flames completely engulfing the structure.
You just don't know, seemingly, where the next fire is going to occur.
This is just some of the devastation left in the wildfires.
That is the tragedy. I think what we have got to accept, those of us in the third world countries, is that disasters like this will be very, very hard to cope and to rebuild for even nations like the USA, the Americans. What more of nations that have been living from hand to mouth? As much as the developed world would want to help, when you have got at your doorstep a disaster such as this, you will not be able to help somebody else. And so those of us in the third world countries must know that if we should face a similar disaster under these conditions, we will have to do the best we can. Are we prepared to cope? The truth of the matter is we are not. Every time there is hunger and starvation in Zimbabwe, we have struggled to cope. And that is the problem with Zimbabwe. We have had the opportunity to grow, to sort out our political and economic problems. The economy has nosedived ever since the country's independence in 1980. Today, Zimbabwe is one of the poorest countries in the region. Yes, the ruling elite would want to tell us that the economy is on the mend. The truth of the matter is it is not. And the longer we keep on drifting, as we have done these last 40 years, the harder it's going to be to revive the economy. And it's going to be even tougher when we are facing some of these natural disasters. Zimbabwe has had a taste of some of these natural disasters. We all remember Cyclone Ida. And a few weeks ago, Cyclone Chido. Yes, by the time it reached Zimbabwe, the storm had lost most of its power and ferocity. But we know that as these problems of global warming continue, we will be looking at these cyclones hitting Zimbabwe with devastating winds and amounts of rainfall, causing enormous damage. We will not be able to cope. The agency of Zimbabwe sorting out our economic and political problems cannot be overemphasized. We do not have the luxury of having another rigged elections in 2028. That is the truth. We cannot carry on. It cannot be business as usual. We need to sort out our political and economic problems as a matter of urgency. What is happening in countries like USA, the damage that has been caused, should be a reminder for all of us of what could happen in Zimbabwe too. We do not have the luxury of continuing with this madness. We know the solution to our political problem. We have to deal with the case of rigged elections. Nothing will change until we deal with this problem. What is so disappointing is that this issue of rigged elections is not a rocket science problem. We cannot pretend that we don't know what to do. It's not rocket science. Why we are struggling to deal with it beggars belief. in this day and age, for us to be failing to hold free, fair, and credible elections is simply unforgivable. We really do not need somebody to tell us that elections are flawed. We should know it by now. And yet here we are, 44 years after independence, we still have the problem of rigged elections. And as long as we remain stuck with this ZANU-PF regime, I think there will be no meaningful economic recovery. So what is the solution? At the present moment, the ideal solution would be that we implement the reforms and we have free, fair, and credible elections. I'm a realist. ZANU-PF is not going to reform itself out of office. That is a fact. And so 2028 elections are going to be a rerun of 2023, 2018, etc. Plan B would be that the opposition should stop participating in these flawed elections to give the regime legitimacy. That too is not going to happen. I'm a realist. Why do I say so? Well, it has not happened since 2013. MDC CCC leaders were warned in 2013 that ZANU-PF will rig the elections. They ignored the warning and they participated in those flawed elections. That is the reality. Indeed, MDC leaders had the golden opportunity to implement the democratic reforms which would have stopped ZANU-PF rigging the elections. They did not, out of greed. 5 years of the GNU were wasted. They failed to implement even one token reform. Mugabe bribed Morgan Tsvangirai and company with the trappings of high office. And as they say, the rest is history. So what is Plan C? The Plan C is we cannot stop ZANU-PF holding these flawed elections. We cannot stop CCC participating in these flawed elections. But what we can do is deny ZANU-PF political legitimacy by making sure that ordinary Zimbabweans do not participate in these flawed elections. Those in the rural areas will be coerced to participate. That I accept. But there is no reason, there is no excuse for those in the urban centers participating. In the past, those in the urban centers have been conned by Nelson Chamisa and company to participate. In 2023, he told them that he had plugged all the vote-rigging loopholes. How anyone with half a brain would believe such nonsense beggars belief. And yet, nearly 2 million Zimbabweans, mostly in the urban centers, did participate in those flawed elections. and thus giving ZANU-PF legitimacy. I think what I find so disappointing is that most of those people in the urban centers are better educated than those in the rural areas. And therefore, then one would expect that they will be better informed. We cannot pretend that we've got a problem in Zimbabwe. We do. We have a serious problem in Zimbabwe. We have to persuade those Chamisa Chete Chete supporters to stop participating in these flawed elections. And it is not going to be an easy task. But it must be done. That is the only way we're going to stop this circus of rigged elections and bad governance. I go back to the original subject I started with, the problems in in the USA. This is real. Americans, with all their resources, have struggled to contain this fire because of the conditions. And in this particular case, this similar climate change induced disasters would hit third world countries. You cannot expect countries like America to ignore the problems in their own backyard to help another country when we are talking of such problems. If we are serious about ending our own problems in Africa, we must also be serious about addressing the problem of bad governance. Nothing will change until we deal with our problems of bad governance. And the challenges coming from climate change are pressing us to remember that this is a matter of urgency. Many lives will be lost by those nations who fail to deal with their own problems. Food for thought. Thank you very much, those of you who were able to join. Hope you'll be able to do so tomorrow, 6 UK time, 8 o'clock Zimbabwean time. Good night.